Good evening and welcome back to Cruising Off Duty. I am Craig. Well, if you've been watching the channel, you know I've been doing a lot of product reviews on products that help you live off the grid longer. This episode is no exception. We're talking batteries, except I've never been more excited about getting a battery than this battery right here because it meets a perfect need I have. A battery that has big volts and big amp hour capacity at the same time. I've always found a way to jerry-rig smaller batteries together for my needs, and we'll talk about my main need for these type of batteries later, but my need might not be your need. So we're going to go through why a battery like this might be helpful if you're an RV or boater or live off the grid in a cabin or something like that where you're needing a big house bank to keep things running, whether you're just going to charge this at home and bring it to your cabin or hunt camp, or you're going to bring solar panels like the folding kind, like these kind, or if you're going to permanently mount solar panels on your boat, RV, or off-grid cabin or cottage. So this is, like I said, one of the things I've been the most excited for a battery to ever be reviewed. And again, they sent this to me. It's Litime is the name of the company. I've done reviews on their smaller batteries in the past. LIT, by the way, stands for lithium, because when I did my first review, I called it Litime, because Li to me sounds like lie, but it's Litime for lithium time. So just so you know, I mispronounced it. Sorry for that last time. So I did a review on these little there's their 12 volt, 100 amp hour batteries. They're very, very, very small, but I like having 24 volts. So what I've done is I wire them in series. So whenever I get two 100 amp hour, 12 volt batteries, I put them in series and make a 24 volt, 100 amp hour battery. And we'll get into why I do that. This solves that because now I don't have to have two batteries wired together to make it work for me. I have one massive battery, very big. So we're gonna go through all the features and what you'll do. And the best way for me to do the features so that I don't forget one is I'm gonna just scroll through their website. They itemize all the different features. I'll talk about each one and how this benefits you. Oh, but before I do that, let me just talk about what you get. When you get this, it comes in a box that's super, super padded with foam. So when it arrives at your house, you don't have to worry. There's so much padding around this. Even though this thing weighs 84.5 pounds, it is a beast, beastly heavy. So the poor UPS or FedEx driver is gonna bring it to your house. Sorry for them. But anyways, when you get it, it's packed very well. You get, these bolts that go in the top. You get a separate set, so you get two sets in case, I guess, you lose one. Plus, like every battery, you get these little plastic caps that go on top. I never use them. I've got an inventory of extra ones of these bolts and extra plastic tips that I never use because I never lose these things and I never put caps on them. I guess if you're transporting this like in the back of a pickup truck or something and you've got metal tools back there and you're afraid like a metal tool is gonna land on top of the battery and short it out between the positive and negative, then I guess it would make sense to put plastic caps on these things, but I carry it around pretty gingerly. I don't want to drop one of these things. I don't throw it in the back of a pickup truck or anything like that, so I never use the plastic caps. But if you see a need for it, feel free to put them on there. They're there. They come with the package. All right, let's talk features here. Okay, going right from the Litime website, you can see that this is the American version. There's also a Canadian version that tells you the exact same stuff, just has a different price. I believe in Canadian dollars, it's 1,700 bucks. As you can see, the American one, it's on sale right now for 1,300 bucks. It sucks. I'm Canadian, as you can tell from the shirt. It sucks that our Canadian dollar is so weak compared to the US dollar. We can thank Mr. Trudeau for totally screwing our currency. But yeah, we just have to live with it. Right now, we pay a lot more for things than they do in the United States. So let's just scroll down here. Here's what I'm talking about. They mention specifically RVs. But I'm a boater, and I'm sure a lot of my viewers are boaters. That's probably how you came across my channel. Boaters need big house banks as well because most sailors or boaters don't spend most of their time plugged into shore power. They're out on the water, they're anchored somewhere, whatnot. Just like an RVer who might be boondocking in the middle of nowhere and doesn't have the ability to plug into a powered campsite, we need big battery banks. And the future is lithium iron phosphate. If you still have a sailboat or an RV using lead acid batteries as your house bank battery, do yourself a favor, toss those out, get yourself some lithium iron phosphate batteries. It is a much better technology, and we'll talk about that in a second. The most important thing, as they say, is a strong, robust battery management system. In this case, for this one, I believe it's a 200 amp built-in battery management system. So what does a battery management system do? It protects you from things like overcharge, undercharge, overheating, overcurrent, and short circuits. So if any of those things happen, the battery management system, think of it as a little computer chip board that's in there. It's constantly checking the voltage of the charge coming in, the capacity of the battery, and all that stuff. It'll make sure that even if you have a dumb battery charger that just keeps trying to plow more power into this battery, the battery management system will go, nope, we're full. not accepting any more current. Same on the downside when you're discharging. It will get down to what we would consider zero, because with a lithium iron phosphate battery, you literally can kill these batteries to zero, because zero is the level at which the battery management system chip will shut off the battery and not allow any more discharging to go on. So it protects you. Why is that important for you if you're an RVer or sailor, boater, whatnot, or even an off-grid person? If you have this plugged into your house bank and you're running fridges and other things that are constantly coming on, coming off, coming on, come off, and I've experienced this firsthand, you have a fridge that is running nonstop. You leave your boat, maybe for the week, come back the next weekend, thinking that your solar panels on your boat are going to keep up with the need of the fridge. Unfortunately, you get days while you're nowhere near your boat where it rains for 3 steady days. Or in my case, we had a huge windstorm and the wind whipped the solar cord so hard it came disconnected from the solar panel, and therefore my solar wasn't bringing any more power into my battery bank. At the time I was using lead acid batteries. This was years ago before I had the intelligence to go to lithium iron phosphate. I came back to my boat and my lead acid battery bank was dead. And it had probably been dead for days because I was only coming from one weekend to the next weekend. So when I got there, no juice in my batteries at all. Of course, I plugged into shore power and recharged my batteries back up and they seemed to get full, but I noticed at that point I'd permanently damaged the batteries. They never had the capacity they used to. I used to find that I would leave the dock all nice and charged, I'd go out and anchor, and then I'd start watching my battery juice, my level get lower and lower and lower quicker than it ever had. In essence, I'd permanently damaged my lead acid batteries. Because of the technology of lead acid batteries, you're not supposed to go below 50% of the charge. So if you have lead acid batteries and it says it's a 100 amp hour rated battery, it's really a 50 amp hour rated battery, because you're not supposed to go below 50% of its capacity. So a lead acid battery is overstating its real value to you. When these batteries say 100 amp hour in this case, 12 volt, 200 amp hour in this case, 24 volt, you are getting that. In fact, you're getting that and then some. I will talk about my review of me discharging this and how many amp hours I actually got, and it's more than its stated amount, so that's good. So you're getting all that protection from battery management system, so you can set it and forget it with these. Leave things running when you leave your RV or boat, knowing that even if some catastrophe happens, your solar stops working, these things won't get permanently damaged if you discharge them to zero. So let's move on from that. So 200 amp hour built-in BMS, it says up to 5 seconds of 400 amps. I said amp hour, 200 amp a battery management system, 5 seconds of up to 400 amps. So if you also have surge and draw, it's fine for 5 seconds, as long as you're below 400 amps. And it's got 2 heat sinks in it, and it kind of shows you that in this little diagram right here. So that's the way the battery cells are. They're square bricks. They take up the most amount of space, give you the most battery for the space. And because of that, as they say in the top left corner here, it's 11% smaller and 5% lighter. I think what they mean there is not versus lead acid, because I think it's about 35% lighter than a lead acid battery that has the same capacity as this. What they're talking about is 11% smaller than if I took two, I got one over there. Let me grab it. If I took 2 of these, so this is a 12.8, in essence, a 12 volt, 200 amp hour battery. Fairly big, not as big as this, but as you can see, if I wanted to have 24 volt, put 2 of these in series, I would then have a 24, in essence, really a 25.6 volt, 200 amp hour battery. 2 of these in series equals 1 of these. As you can see, 2 of these would be a real challenge to carry around. You'd have to take 1 at a time, which means if you wire those in series, you have to carry one. You have to constantly disconnect them, carry one over to your charger, charge it, carry the other one over to your charger, charge it. This puts it all into one battery. So that's what they mean. One of these is actually, according to this, it seems actually it's underrepresenting, but it's 11% smaller and 5% lighter than 2 of those 12 volt, 100 amp hour batteries. So there you go. So the next diagram, they're really just showing you that you can get these put in parallel in series and make a massive house bank battery. So you show a little diagram here of a house with a ton of solar panels on the roof, going to an MPPT controller, over to your battery bank, depending on how many you have, which then goes to an inverter, which then can run your whole house, just as if it's a normal house plugged into city power. As they're showing you, one battery by itself is 5.12 kilowatt hours of power. 2 in parallel is 10.4 kilowatts, or 2 in series, either or. 4 in parallel, or 2 in parallel, 2 in series, is 20.48 kilowatt hours. And 8 batteries together, which would be 4 parallel, 2 series, is 40.96 kilowatt hours. So, I mean, if you had 8 of these in parallel and series, that is a massive, massive battery bank. You could definitely run your whole house on that. The next thing, and I've talked about this many times when it comes to lithium iron phosphate batteries, is their longevity and how many charge cycles you have. And let me say one more time, what a charge cycle is a battery completely dead to completely full is a charge cycle. Every time you do that, that's another cycle. You can do it, if you charged it 100% full every time, you get 4,000 cycles. So if you killed this massive battery, or if you had 2 or 3 or 4 together, this massive battery bank, if you killed it to 0, you could charge it 4,000 times. Well, there's only 365 days in a year. So that's probably like 10, probably you're not going to kill it every single day, probably 15 years, 20 maybe if you're not totally killing it. In fact, if you go down, if you only charge it to 80% full every time, you would get 6,000 cycles. If you went only to 60%, you get 15,000 cycles. Now, you're saying, well, why would you only charge it to 60%? You would only probably ever charge it to 100% if you plug it into a battery charger, because if you're just using solar and you're getting solar when you can and you're depleting it when you don't have solar, like at night, you're probably going to get, it's just going to get randomly up to a value, and then the sun's going to go down, and then it's going to start dwindling back down. The next day you charge it back up. Occasionally on a perfectly blue sunny day, you'll probably will get your battery bank all the way to 100%. But on those kind of cloudy-ish days, overcast days, you're never going to get to 100%. So the only way to get to 100% charge is to plug it into the wall and charge it with a battery charger, probably the only way. So all they're really saying is if you commonly only charge it to 80% full, you're going to get 6,000 cycles. And if for whatever reason you commonly only get it to about 60% full, and if you had a massive battery bank with like 8 batteries together, it's pretty likely you're almost never going to get that massive battery bank all the way to 100%, even on a crystal clear blue day. But the upside to having a bigger battery bank is you get more life cycles. If you don't push it right to 100% every single time, you get more life cycles. 15,000 cycles would be like 30, 40 years of use. Chances are there will be a much better, newer battery technology that you'll probably want to move to, something that's about this size, that's got the capacity of this. That's probably the technology of the future. And by that point, you'll be more than happy to get rid of these because they'll have done 10, 15, 20 years of helpful use to you. And you'll be fine to just pass them on to the recycler and get a new battery bank. So there you go. These things will last forever, for in essence, until the technologies no longer exist. So that's pretty much it. The rest is just the specs, which you can read at your own leisure. There is a 5-year warranty. I talk about the cycles again. The normal full voltage is actually 25.6. So this one, like the smaller one actually quoted 12.8 volts. This one's only quoting 24. Yeah, 24 on the front. But it's actually 25.6 when it's fully charged. So just so you know. And that's how come they quote a higher, like 51, I think they say about 5,100 kilowatt or watt hours. And that's because they're taking the 25 volts times 200. So that's how kilowatts work. It's volts times amps or amp hours. So in this case, it's a 25.6. Let's say on average, it's about 25 volts because it's never going to be fully charged the whole time you're using it. 25 volts times 200 is 5,000. So there's where they're getting that 5,000 watt hours. So there you go. Battery management system again. They're just talking about that. You charge at 28.8 volts. So that's what they're suggesting for your battery charger. Recommended charge current is 40 amps. 28.8 volts at 40 amps. You'd have to have a big battery charger. I don't think it's going to hurt it if you charge it with smaller. I do not have a battery charger. I'll show you the one later. The one actually in the next episode, I'll talk about the battery charger I use to charge all my lithium batteries when I'm done discharging them to my solar generator. I have to recharge them when I have lots of sun, and I'll talk about that later. And that's where I'll show you my lithium Amazon special battery charger that does fine for me. But I'll tell you, it's not giving me 40 amps. I think at 24 volts, it's giving me 10 amps. So it takes a long time to fully charge this. But I don't think it damages your battery to charge at a lower rate. If anything, the only time you're ever going to hurt a battery is if you charge it at too high a rate. So if I was trying to put like 50 amps into this battery, I might start hurting it because it's recommending 40 amps. So there you go. Discharge temperature. So here's you, It's saying to minus 20C, and charges, they don't want you to charge it below 0C. So again, I've talked about this before. Lithium iron phosphate, the only downside is you can't use these as like car start batteries, especially if you live in Canada, because they don't like getting charged when it's cold, below zero. So they're saying at 0 degrees or 50, 0 to 50 is the normal charge level. So as long as it's below 50 degrees Celsius and above freezing, you can charge it. And for the Americans out there, above 32 degrees Fahrenheit, up to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. So I guess if you live in Arizona, you're fine as long as it's below 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Storage temperature, it can be down to as minus 10. So with lithium iron phosphate batteries, you can leave them in below freezing temperatures. You just can't charge them below that. So what I suggest, if you do have this in an outdoor cabin that you only go on the weekends and sometimes it gets really, really cold at night, put this in an insulated box. And then if it's trickle charging or running a 12 volt fridge off of it or whatever you're doing, since it's being used, it always, inside here you're emitting a little bit of heat. There's always, whether you're charging or discharging, there's always a little bit of heat buildup. And that little bit of heat inside an insulated box will keep it warm enough that even though the outside temperature might be below freezing, inside the insulated box, because of the battery being used, you should be fine. You should be above zero. Again, if you do try and charge it, if there's some sort of solar panel coming in and it is really cold, the battery management system will kick in and not let you charge it if it's below a certain temperature. But again, you can probably eliminate that concern if you put this inside a foam insulated box. It'll stay warm. And that is pretty much it for their website. That talks about the specs. And yeah, I'm excited to get into the next episode because I want to spend about 10-15 minutes showing you what I do with a 24 volt battery. If you have a solar generator, or some people like to call them power stations, if you have one and you want to, let's say you bought one that's like a 2,000 watt hour battery bank and you go, God, I wish I had a bigger battery bank. Buying one of these, whether it's a smaller one or a massive one like this, is the best, most economical way to massively expand your solar generator. The only thing that you should buy a solar generator based on its criteria is how many watts do you need AC out. If you say, I don't have anything that runs over 2,000 watts, then you only need a 2,000 watt inverter on your solar generator. If you go, geez, I use heavy power tools and a lot of high draw stuff, then you need to find a solar generator that's big enough to have like a 3,000 watt inverter built into it and whatnot. The battery bank is important. How much battery bank gives you how much runtime you have at a certain watt, but this can solve a lot of those problems. So if you bought one that's just barely good enough in terms of battery capacity, you can tie this into it and run for, with this thing connected to it, 3-4 times as long as your solar generator battery capacity alone would be. So that's something that I do all the time, and I want to show you how to do that, and that'll be in the next episode. So, oh yeah, wanted to show you, I have a, compared to this battery, a slowish draw, well, here it is right here. It's a capacity tester. You can put charge through this. It'll tell you how many watt hours you got out of a battery. Unfortunately, it's not designed for something this big. I think the maximum draw I can do is 10 amps. It's about 180 watts, 190 watts is the max I can draw through this. It's just not built for something this big. When you're putting 180, 190 watts out of this, it took forever to drain it. But you'll see right here, it got over 5,400 watt hours. Okay, I decharged it through my little meter here, and this battery got a total of 5,412 watt hours on a full discharge, right down to zero. So that's pretty good, pretty good. So yeah, way more than its rated 5,100. It got 5,400. And I love that about batteries compared to solar generators. Batteries tend to underrepresent what you're really gonna get. Solar generators, this is just one of about 13 I have in my house. I have another one over there. I've got one in my workout room. They're all over the place. They're great. They serve the function of being able to take solar panel charge in. They have an MPPT controller to convert the solar into your battery bank for the right watts and amps and all that stuff to maximize your charge. And of course, it has built-in inverters and DC ports for your phone and laptop and everything else you want to run. I love them. The problem is they always quote you, oh, we got 2,000 watt hours of capacity. And when you really test it, it's never that. It's always like 85, maybe if you're lucky, 90% of that capacity. Batteries, lithium iron phosphate batteries, they tend to underrepresent what you're going to get. A good one anyway should kind of exceed that. So this one did 5,400 and change. I'll put it on the screen what the reading was versus its claimed 5,100. So there you go. I give this battery 2 thumbs up. Like I said, I've had the smaller LiTime batteries in a milk crate. It's small enough, 2 of them together, that one of those square plastic milk crates, I just drop them in that and I pick them up and I can bring them wherever I want. You can with this, because there is 2 straps, you can pick it up like this with just one hand through both straps. But obviously 85 pounds is pretty heavy. You're never going to put 2 of these together and carry it around. So yeah, this big bad Mama Jamma is way more capacity than what I've done here with 2 small ones in series. But 24 volt, 100 amp hour capacity, 200 amp hour capacity. So there you go. I'm loving using this. I'm going to show you in the next episode too that there was a little diagnostic reader that I'm going to wire onto this. It tells you the rated state of capacity in terms of a percent, how many watts are coming in if you're charging, how many watts are going out. So you can actually look at your battery from this monitor and know exactly where you are in state of charge and how much time you estimate have left in the battery, which is nice. I would love if LiTime or any of these other battery manufacturers actually just built a little LED screen into the top of the battery or somewhere on the side to show you the stated rate of percent charge, and if you're drawing out of it how much time estimate you have left to either discharge it if you're taking power out, or how many hours it's going to take to fully charge it if you're bringing power in. That's what this little meter does for me, and I love it because let's face it, you look at a battery, you don't know what state of charge is. You got to go get a voltmeter and plug it in, and it says, oh, it's 25.3 volts, and you're like, I think that's pretty full, isn't it? Or is it 25.6? So is it, you know what I mean? You're looking at volts going, I guess that's good. So yeah, the meter is a good thing. So I'll show you that in the next episode. So hopefully you're looking forward to that. If you found this informative, show the channel some love by giving it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already for more Live Off the Grid Longer products. And until next time, this is Craig signing off, wishing you safe cruising.